Hi guys, and welcome to my review of the Sony Xperia Z5, the first in line of my Z5 reviews. There will also be the compact and the premium, along with a comparison of the Z5 against the Z3. And one thing from the start, I will complain a little bit more maybe, and there will be some high-end nitpicking, but I want to let you know why. I've been using the Z3 from the release as my daily driver. I gave it the title of the best phone of 2014, and even in 2015 it didn't make enough wrong not to use it still as my daily driver. And that's why the Z5 has to step in some big footsteps, and that's why I have to complain, because some things are better than on the Z3, but some just are not. But don't take this wrong, because later back then in the recap and in the conclusion I will even the level, and then you will know why I did complain, but if this is still a great phone or not. So let's just watch that. Okay, let's start off with the design and build quality size comparison first. Here with the Z3, as you can see, the same thickness, the same width and the same height, but the Z5 actually feels a little bit thicker and also wider, mostly because of this curve. As you can see here, this has a way bigger curve and makes it feel narrow, and also thinner because you hold on to less than here. I think that's maybe because of the fingerprint reader here, because they maybe needed a little bit more space. Other than that, you can see the power button is pretty much in the same position. The volume rocker though not. I'm not quite sure why they went so much more lower. I'm not quite sure, because it's quite unhandy to use it. Otherwise, the camera button is okay. Here we have the flap for the microSD, which we don't have here anymore, but it's somewhere else. But I want to get to the subjective thing actually before I'm going to talk about the rest. Quick size comparison here with the premium. As you can see, it's still noticeably smaller, but compared to the Z5 compact, it is a lot bigger. So there's quite a big difference. So there should be a proper one for everyone. But let's get to the subjective part. But let's actually start off with the overview. You see the camera button, volume rocker, power button. All that is fine. On the top we have the microphone and the headphone jack. On the left side here we have the SD card tray and SIM card tray. All that is here with the Xperia logo, micro USB and the hole for the lanyard. On the back we can see the material here. So let's start with the subjective thing. The one thing about the design I'm not the biggest fan of is the curve. I would wish for it to be bigger so the device would feel thinner and also narrow, because it still feels more boxy and more unhandy or unwieldy than the Z3 did. Mostly because of this curve. You can get used to it, definitely no problem, but it's odd to see them going back something closer to the Z2 again. Not quite sure why. The back here, as we did see on the Z3, we had glass, which I think is grippy on both sides. Here we have this frosted glass that feels really nice, but it doesn't, at least for me, not provide always the same amount of grip. It was quite slippery, and I noticed this once I used the Z5 Premium. I just prefer both sides to be kind of glass. It's not bad, it feels great, but it's not super grippy either. But my main issue here is, and I'm not sure if you can see this, there is a little bit of a gap here above on both sides. Here it's a kind of plastic rim that you can see going all around the device, and on the back it's the device itself. And I think it feels quite edgy and quite sharp towards the edges, and all around you always, especially if you hold it onto, you always scrub against this. This is what doesn't make it feel so nice and organic and round and nice, just overall great as it did on the Z3. But I also, from an objective standpoint, get why. It doesn't lay flat anymore, so the glass is less likely to get scratched or break. Same goes for the front. It doesn't also slide anymore as the old one did, because the old one, as you can see here, slides quite easy and did slip off some tables. This one won't. So I get why they did it, and from an objective standpoint it is an improvement, but just from an objective natural feel in the hand standpoint it is not, at least not for me, but that is my personal opinion. Other than that, fingerprint reader, let's check that one real quick. As you can see, I turned it on and I think it's super fast. Just press and hold on to it a little bit longer, but as you can see here, this is really fast. If I just tap, this is really fast, no problems here at all. We still have double tap to wake, but I actually had to disable it because it went on in my pockets way too often. And even though you can't go into the system here if it's in the pockets, I managed to actually dial some numbers and all that. It didn't really call anyone, but that was a little bit odd to see. So I had to disable it, but that could be a minor thing. And overall, I still have to say, here with the camera on the front, camera on the back and everything else, they did a quite nice job. It definitely feels super premium. It definitely feels substantial, definitely feels solid and definitely nicely made. But it just can't keep up with the great feel in hand that the old one had. But let's get over that and go to the display. 1080p IPS, and it's a big step over the Z3 display. It's a little bit brighter, but that's not the main point here, because the white point this time out of the box is way better. I didn't change anything, even though we still have the white balance option in the settings, but this white is absolutely great, no complaints at all. Text is super sharp, and the blacks. We still have IPS glow, which you won't really see here on the video, but it's absolutely on a great level. White, as I said, is great. Viewing angles as well, absolutely stable, but not on a Super AMOLED level or not on the best level. You can see it just dims quite early, but in normal use, I never made something about it. I never had an issue with that. Colors, really nicely saturated, really vibrant this time. And I will make a comparison with the Z3 and you will see how much more vibrant and nicer they are to look at. So the display is a really great one, but it's just not on the level on the very best ones anymore these days, because with something like the S6 or so, they just are a step above, but it's a really great display. So let's check the sound here. Okay, sound. I gotta say the front-facing stereo speakers sound quite nice, but they could maybe sound a little bit richer, but that's not the issue. For me, the sound is overall really nice and it's a big step up, especially compared to the Z3 with Lollipop, but I still think it could be a little bit louder, especially because we have front-facing stereo, and in most situations it was fine, but I still a lot of times just thought I would have wished for it to be a little bit louder. The balance itself is nice, clear highs, mids are okay, a little bit bass sometimes would be nice, but the sound overall is really good, but they could have made it absolutely great by just making it a little bit louder. That would have been all. Now, the performance here, as we can see in the browser, super smooth, and I gotta say the Snapdragon 810 makes a great job. Everything is buttery smooth, so the browsing experience is absolutely great. Here in Phoenix, as we can see here, also super smooth. There's pretty much no lag at all. Sometimes there is some minor stutters, but really nothing to really talk about. I was absolutely pleased here with the performance. Really nice to see, because the S810 can perform well, but I also have to say it doesn't feel any faster and maybe even a little bit less smooth than the M9 did, that is actually out for almost a year now. I think that one performed at least on the same level. Doesn't say it's bad, but it's something that's almost a year later coming out. Just not a big step up anymore. Okay, I think it's more like half a year, but as you can see, performance overall super nice, no complaints here at all. Let's check the gaming performance, and while it is loading, I gotta say, yes, it does throttle. I tried with Antutu and it jumped from, I think, like 77,000 to 57,000 after a while. Does it make any impact on the performance in real life? I don't really think so, because I never really noticed. I played games for a long of times or videos, and it gets warm at about this place here, but just the upper half. And if you hold it like this, you never even feel the heat. So I had no issues. Yes, it does throttle. Yes, it gets quite warm, but nothing serious, nothing of an issue. So here you can see the gaming performance, absolutely fine. Playable at all times with really high frame rates. There are a few drops in terms of frames, but definitely nothing to bother about. So I was definitely pleased with the gaming performance, definitely pleased with the in-app performance. And to get back to one thing, multitasking as well, sorry, was absolutely fine. If we just launch an older app here right now once again, you can see it didn't even have to reload. Everything is absolutely fine. So performance is on a very high level, and I don't really see many phones being any better in any terms. Now, about the full charge, I lost my values. I will just post them here. I think it was about 3 hours with the standard charger, but that one is not quick charge 2 enabled. And what I did, I used my Oki, I think it was my Oki charger, and then it needed still about 1 hour and 40 or something like that. So even though it should use quick charge 2.0, it's not the fastest charging. Now, but what about the battery life then? Because that's the more important thing in the end. And here are my results. I got about 4 hours over the course of 1 day, 3 hours over the course of 10 hours, but this was with a heavier, and I had an issue here with a drain, so just forget that. Here, slightly over 4 hours over the course of 1 day, 4 hours and 20 over the course of 1 day, and 4 hours. So we can pretty much agree about 4 hours, maybe slightly more. This was with a brightness of 65% all the time, because the screen needs a little bit more percentage to get bright, but then it is actually very, very bright. So battery life is definitely decent with about, I would say, let's say at least solid 4 hours to maybe room with some further minutes. And yeah, that's it, all I have to say for that. Now, the software. Let's talk about that. We have a very stock-like UI. As you can see here, you can rearrange those here. No problems here at all. There are available. That is nice. We don't have any lock screen targets. We don't really have anything on the lock screen besides those two. We have the fingerprint reader. We have the multitasking, the stock one, with some minor additions here with the small apps that I didn't use at all. And on my personal device, I actually deactivated it because it just clears up more space. Other than that, we are running Android 5.1.1, but Sony is known to be quite good with updates, so 6.0 or 6.0.1 or so should be quite early here. Themes engine is there. It doesn't really make a big impact on the overall system design, but it's nice. We have double tap to wake, as I already said. We have glove mode. We have adaptive brightness. We have a very stock-like experience with a few minor enhancements, not a whole lot, but that makes the device feel very snappy and zippy because it's not burdened by anything. So overall, absolutely nice. We have the draw. All is good. I really like the software. The root support will be a little bit more limited compared to something like the Nexus for sure. You will get some stock ROM apps that are a little bit stock ROMs that are enhanced with a few additions, and there will be AOSP ROMs at some point, but those had some limitations. The camera wasn't as good, the battery life wasn't as good, so I wouldn't really consider that so much as the stock ROMs that were actually quite nice once enhanced. So now let's get into the battery, the camera. I want to start off with the selfies. Selfies look good, but you need a proper lighting because as you can see here, if you don't have proper lighting, it sometimes has a little bit trouble exposuring, but once you have good light, you get really nice ones. So what about the low camera quality? What I noticed a lot is that it brightens up the picture and then you see a lot more noise, but it doesn't maintain anymore a sharp picture. I've seen this picture already a few times with more realistic exposure and then also sharper, but it's still okay, but just not as natural. Now what about in normal lighting? In normal lighting you can get really sharp pictures, really great exposure, really great color balance, natural colors, all that. Autofocus on macro had a few issues sometimes, just not focusing super properly, but good enough. So overall the camera is really good, no complaints here at all. Pictures were turned out really nice. Autofocus did a good job on landscape especially, but now about the video qualities that I see as the biggest highlight here. Especially 1080p 60 frames looked extremely buttery smooth, awesome, super smooth and fast zoom. Autofocus was perfect, the exposure was very smooth, a nice transition. That was done really nice. Where I wasn't so happy about was the 4K experience because as you can see here, the 4K footage seems quite wobbly, a little bit janky. Also the color seemed a little bit more dull in my experience. So that's it for the detailed part. Okay, time for the recap. The conclusion though could be a little bit longer, the recap could be quite short. Design and build quality. I gotta say, build quality absolutely fine. Really substantial feel, really premium feel, really nice overall, no faults. But from an objective standpoint, I see the improvements, I see the little edge has some reason, but just from a subjective standpoint, I don't like it. It doesn't feel as smooth and comfortable in the hand anymore. Yes, you can get used to it, but after using it for more than a week, I still don't think it feels great in the hand. Eventually you will get used to it, but I'm not quite sure if this is everyone's taste. I know a few people that say it's a big improvement, it doesn't slide off the table anymore, it doesn't scratch anymore, the fingerprints are gone. But I also know a few people that say, I asked a few people, and everyone said that this edge around the device just feels awkward. And that's where I will leave it. The display, absolutely great, really bright, really vibrant color this time, great white point, great colors, viewing angles are totally solid. Really, really good display, but these days just not something really super impressive, but gets the job done more than just satisfying. Now, the sound is satisfying, but also not impressive, because I would have wished for a little bit more maximum volume. The sound balance though was fine. It sounded a little bit hollow at some points, but overall definitely not enough to give it something on the lower scale. It's definitely one of the better ones, but just making it a little bit louder would have made it a lot better. Performance though is not able to be a lot better, because very smooth, very responsive, very snappy. Overall great, it didn't really hesitate, responsive screen as well for gestures and all that. Multitasking with 3GB was capable as well, and the gaming performance was top notch, absolutely fine. Some minor slowdowns, but overall great experience. Yes, it does throttle and it gets warm. Does it matter? Nope, I don't give up. Because in normal use, I didn't really notice anything of that. And yes, Antutu shows me 20,000 K less, but it doesn't show me like that much of a percentage less in terms of frames in normal use, so I don't care at all. The battery life is absolutely solid, absolutely fine. With about 4 hours, I would say, on an average level through the day, you should be fine. Of course, you can get more. Just lower the brightness, and if you don't use your phone as awkwardly as me, you should at least get 4.5 hours out of that. The quick charge didn't work out as fast as I expected it to be. Closer to something like 1 hour and 30, 1 hour and 50 is something where I expected a little bit more. Now, the software, absolutely fine. I really like the Sony UI. It's minimal, it's stock looking, but it has a few minor adjustments, just a few enhancements. I would wish maybe these days to make a bigger jump from the older versions, but still totally fine. They have a good update politic and absolutely fine. No complaints here either. Really does a great job. One of my most favorite UIs out there still. The camera. For pics, absolutely great. Low light maybe not so much, but the rest of the pics, you need a little bit more effort sometimes. You need to be slightly an advanced user to get great shots, because just out of the box, especially with the viewfinder being a bit odd, because I saw so many odd pictures on the viewfinder that turned out really nice later on the monitor. So just keep that in mind. You don't always get the shot that you actually see on the viewfinder, which is a little bit odd. Video camera on 1080p with 60 frames was absolutely amazing, impressive for me. 4K not so much, but overall still a great camera, but can't compete with something like the Note or maybe like something with the Nexus 5X or so. That leads me to the conclusion. Is it a great phone? And yes, I know a lot of people will complain that I was way too negative, but I told you why. I'm a big fan of the Z3, and just mostly maybe because of the feel in hand and some minor things, I just am not impressed that this device is 1 year newer and doesn't bring so much more to the table. But if you don't see it from this standpoint, this is an amazing phone, because just see like this, build quality is top notch, the display is great, sound is really good, performance is flawless, really, really good, software is top, and the camera is on a very, very high level. So what could you possibly wish more for? Okay, it's a little bit on the more pricey side, here at around 550 euros right now. And in the US, it will come without the really, really well operating fingerprint reader. But I gotta say one thing, let's quickly think of that. I gave the Nexus 5X the title of the best phone of 2015, but back then I didn't review this one yet. So if I would have to choose now, and I wouldn't want to use custom ROMs, I think I would give this the best phone, because there aren't just as many phones out there anymore. More of them are really phablets these days. And then this is a great offering, because the screen is better than on the Nexus. Battery life is about the same. Camera is maybe slightly weaker actually, but the performance therefore is a bit better. More RAM and the A10 compared to the 808, and I see the difference here. So that's why I still think I would prefer it over the Nexus. And despite all the complaining, despite all the nagging, it still is one of the best available phones out there. It looks different if you are looking for a phablet, but if you're looking for a phablet, the Z5 is not your thing, but the Z5 Premium will be the thing, which I will review also. So I know I didn't sound overly impressed. I know I didn't sound overly super satisfied with it, but it's hard to get overly excited since I was wishing for a little bit of a bigger step for a device that is out for more than a year later. So make of that what you want. I can't really help you any other way. So if you liked it, like it. If you didn't. If you want to see more content of that, subscribe to the channel. And if you have any questions or anything to say about the device, leave that in the comments. Other than that, I wish you a nice day. Until next time, bye.